my own journey from being an 18-year-old that had no idea what he was doing and they about to go into six-figure debt by the time I was 25, and then I had to figure out how to get out of that. One of the best quotes that's in the book that I enjoyed, Warren Buffett, generally known as the greatest investor of all time, the GOAT. He said, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Yes. Money comes and goes, but wealth is here to stay. If you know how to keep it from slipping away. You see, it's not about the bling or the ice on your wrist. You can make 1 million and still be financially dismissed.
And today's guest, Drew Boyer, knows this all too well. As a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience, Drew blends his expertise in finance with his love of hip hop culture to teach powerful money lessons. He's also the author of Hip Hop X Finance, Become a Financial Gangster, Get Off That Row, and Stack Your Cash Flow, where he reveals the financial pitfalls and successes of hip hop legends and how you can learn from them.
I love this concept of financial gangster. In this episode, we're digging into the biggest financial mistakes that keep people trapped in debt and how to avoid it, how to balance enjoying your money today while investing for tomorrow, and why financial literacy is the key to breaking free from the cycle of debt.
If you've ever struggled with that, felt overwhelmed by financial decisions, or just want to take control of your money, this episode is for you.
Man, I've been there. And if you're looking for the best kept cash flowing secret of real estate, land flipping, check out our Flipping Dirt coaching program. It's simple to learn, easy to operate, and deliver some of the best returns in the business. Learn more at flippingdirt.us.
Now let's get in the Champions Corner with Drew Boyer.
Boy. Drew, thanks for coming on the show today. We're excited to have you on and talk all things financial planning and music.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for having me today, guys. Excited to be here. I really wanted to bring my boxing gloves, though, just in case I might need them.
I tell you what, we have some handy over here, and we do. I was thinking about this actually. We like to do matchups where we bring on two guests and we debate some topic. Maybe after the show, we can talk about. We've had multiple guests where they come on one-on-one and then we do a matchup. So we'll have to figure out how we do a financial planning type matchup. Maybe there's a debt advocate out there.
Yeah, you throw the punches at me and I'll see if I can take them and give back good points. How about that?
Yeah.
Sounds good, man. Why don't you start us off and give us an overview of, where you are, where you came from, and how you got into financial planning? Just a quick one, and then we can drill into some of these topics in more depth.
Great. Sounds great. So I'm in my 21st year right now doing financial planning, and I started right around 2003. And it was right after the first tech bubble had burst and no one wanted to invest. And then I had about a good 5 years where I got people reintroduced to investing again, started taking some risk on, and you hear about, getting your 10,000 hours in life, 5 years. I thought I'd gotten somewhere and learned everything I needed to. And then the great financial crisis came in and gave everybody a gut punch. I tripped you and stood on top of you. And I learned I didn't know anything. And so ever since then, being scarred by that, I keep learning no matter what I'm doing and where I'm going. And some things that happened out of that is I went independent shortly after working for a small mutual fund company. And so like in the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, I went independent with another group of guys. I did that stint for about 6 years. And then now I've come on to a larger broker dealer since 2016. And I'm serving a big client base of first responders and electrical workers, utility company, good, hardworking, blue-blooded Americans that are out there getting everything done on a daily basis. So I'm happy to serve them. In 2020, when the world shut down, of course, I had the dumb luck of signing up for my CFP, the Certified Financial Planner course, in September 2019. And so I had planned on doing nothing anyways in 2020. And that ended up being a great thing because I didn't feel what anybody else felt. I was studying and working during the day and studying at night. I got that done in a year. And ever since then, I'm happy everything's reopened and getting back out there and getting into the world and trying to make a difference. But after a couple decades here, I felt, I don't know if you've been doing a job for 20 years, it can seem run of the mill after a while. Although I try to make all of my client meetings pretty entertaining so you can educate. I ran down this rabbit hole of wanting to write, and it was an idea on my mind since 2020. And then I finally found some time earlier this year to put together some thoughts on pen and paper. And I've got a book now. That's where I'm at. And before I had to grow up and get a real job, I used to be a drummer. So that's something unique. I'm also left-handed. So I was a drummer growing up. It's the only thing that I can do without thinking about it. Some people can do this, that. I got a pair of drumsticks in my hand and I can hear the music and play it. And so I've always been into rhythm. And so my first love was always music. And then I've come to love finance as well. And so the idea for the book was blending those two things together and seeing how to make finance fun and educate through entertainment.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. They say the riches are in the niches, and you've definitely, I think, found one that is unexplored, at least that I'm aware of. So I love that fact.
And what is the name of the book?
The book is Hip Hop X Finance. And so you have all these collaborations going on now. So it's just how do we mix music and money together? Music is something that's so public and people share it and go to concerts. And then you have like personal finance, which is personal and private, and no one really wants to talk about it, but who's actually been educated about it before. And in the book, I'm describing my own journey from being an 18-year-old that had no idea what he was doing and they about to go into six-figure debt by the time I was 25. And then I had to figure out how to get out of that. One of the best quotes that's in the book that I enjoyed, Warren Buffett, generally known as the greatest investor of all time, the GOAT, he had a quote about if you're getting yourself in trouble or he said, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Yes.
It's such sage advice and just stop what you're doing and then reevaluate, make a plan and get yourself out. So I like to discover and to play with this very public thing of music and very private thing of money. And by sharing stories, if I asked you what genre of music most launch wealth or just boisterousness, it's probably hip hop that comes up to mind with their flaunting jewelry and cars and all these other things. And so I learned early on that a lot of these videos that you would see, all of it's rented. So they don't actually own any of this stuff. They rent it for the music video, right? And in their personal lives, it's really interesting to me to go back and look at a song like 50 Cent's In the Club, what was going on in his life at that point in time. And he was renting an 800-month apartment and he went on tour. And by the time he came back, he had made $38 million and then decided to go buy Mike Tyson's mansion that he went broke from up in Connecticut. And then he ends up making the same mistakes as time went on and his dried up for the time being. So that's what I explore in the book. The massive failures or massive wins, they just have a lot more zeros and commas behind their names than what we do.
It sounds very interesting and very compelling to read.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. I found myself before we aired, just looking at your bio and your history and the book in particular. And it's really an interesting phenomenon, as you just mentioned, in two different avenues. You talked about the personal finance largely being something that is seen as very personal, oftentimes shameful or embarrassing, or at least defensive, let's say, in terms of opening up about where we are with our finances, what's going on, how much money we make, how much debt we may or may not be in, and comparing that to cultural phenomenon, let's just say, because it's not just hip hop or music, right? It's sports, even celebrities in terms of actors and actresses. But yeah, I think in hip hop for sure, there is a very outward display of things, wealth. They sing about it, they talk about it and wear it and all of this. And I'm just really, I'm curious, and we're going 0 to 100 here because I thought we'd step into some things first. But like one of the things I'm curious about, and I know you do a lot of work with financial literacy and helping just educate people and do things, but do you think that the power of financial literacy can be, and this is in true Fight Club fashion, right? We're putting these two head to head. So power of financial literacy and cultural icons or iconism, do you think there's even hope, or how does that play out in your mind? Because it seems just so powerful, right? Especially young people growing up, watching these videos, doing all this stuff and seeing a false culture of bravado and materialism and consumerism.
Look at all the social media. So Instagram, and you have people that are FOMO, fear of missing out, and you only live once. And hey, that person's doing better to me because they only put up their good pictures or they're on vacation. How are they affording these things? And then on the other aspect, money's become ubiquitous. It's a button you click. Like I'm going to go on Amazon. I can buy just about anything. So does money mean anything anymore? And then I could go larger and say, we live in a country right now in America where we make $1, but we spend $1.23. And so from the very top down, it's go broke. But there is hope. There's always hope.
Yeah. Is that a real macro statistic that just based on kind of the consumer debt ratio to,
Yeah, it's the US, it's the debt to GDP.
Uh-huh.
So basically what are we making per year versus what we're spending? And before we got into COVID, we were at around like 98 cents on the dollar.
Hmm.
And then we exploded our money supply and debt spending by about almost 30%. And I'm not a defeatist, but I'm pretty sure everybody out there doesn't really think we're going to pay off our debt. The only way you can do it is try to grow your way out of it.
Yeah.
You have to grow the bottom number bigger than the top number right now that's being spent. I do think there's hope. There's always hope. There was hope for me. I go back, if you're in a hole, stop digging, right? And so at one point coming out of college, I write in the book that my parents gave me a graduation card as soon as I walked out of Ohio State Stadium. And I thought it was like some money straps, and it was a you owe us statement. So anybody out there that's listening and you're crying the blues about your parents, like that's, my parents are different from yours, but they raised us in rural America up in Northeast Ohio to be working hard, to be an entrepreneur. And if you owe money, you pay the money. And I had to fill in the blanks for all the extra financial education by myself. But I got that card and I'm like, oh, and then about a week or two later, Discover Card was very bullish on my future. And they sent me a credit card and Discover Card that I didn't apply for.
No.
And it was for like $20,000. And I'd never made that in a year. I'm like, how could they give me
Right.
a card with a limit more than I've ever made? And that was a downfall there for me because they started sending you checks in the mail. And I'd love to tell you that when I ran up about 50,000 of credit card debt at the beginning, I like to tell you I had some fun with it, but it was just on normal things like rent and food. I didn't go out. I was trying to start a business, and I was always positive on that. And eventually the credit cards dry up and you got to make amends with that. So there is hope. The problem is that there's not a whole lot of education being taught. I think there's a difference between being literate and just having education. So I would start with education first. Do you know, when do you think the only time in this country that there's an actual financial literacy test given? The great thing I discovered right in this book. Any guesses?
I would think it would have to do with some kind of profession, like in your certified financial planner certification or something like that.
You would think. It's actually right before you're allowed to go into bankruptcy court. They wait for you to fail completely.
Wow.
And then so you don't do it ever again, even though your credit's going to get frozen for 7 to 10 years. You have to prove that you've learned your lesson and you're not going to do the same thing again. And that's just so backwards. My mind was blown when I read that. I've been looking it up.
It's a great idea. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can sympathize and empathize with your hardship. I had a little bit of a different path, but I'm very familiar with credit card offers coming into my campus PO box directly when I was living on campus and had my mailbox there. Just, hey, sign up for this credit card and take it. I avoided that largely. I avoided a little bit, but once I got married at a young age to my first wife and life started happening and we had different alignments on money. I'm a bit more of a saver. She was a spender,
Mhm.
but yes, tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt quickly racked up, and you don't get out of that. It's almost impossible. And this was, I think we're probably of a similar age, it sounds, but this was 90s, maybe early 2000s, and the rates on credit cards were just, I think they were probably unregulated at the time, or there may have been some really crazy high cap or something. You make one misstep on those cards and they very quickly take you to the maximum rate and you're not getting out. You're paying the minimum. I would, I was the bill payer and I would look at the
Yeah.
interest charge being charged every month when I made that payment. And it was typically very close to the minimum, if not the minimum. And you're just not getting out. I'm a very math and science oriented person. I could see that this was the case, but it just was a
Mhm.
almost hopeless situation.
Yep. If you're paying 30%, I think the stat is if you're doing minimum payments, I think it takes just the shade under two centuries to pay it off.
Yeah.
It's 198 years.
Yeah.
Unless you're Yoda and you have a lifespan of that long, you're probably never getting out of debt.
Great grandchildren.
Not to mention payday loans, which are closer to
Ooh.
400%.
Yeah.
That's just playing out, just taking advantage of everyone. What I found out, and when I couldn't afford to go out anywhere, it's was writing about in the book. And I'm not trying to get political or anything, but at that point in time, there was the number one rated show was called The Apprentice. And so I remember President Trump was on there. He's, you're fired, you're fired. So I would watch this and I became more curious about who this person was. And he read a couple books and then he had a big up and a big down where he's a billionaire and then he was a negative billion in the hole. And then there was a moment in one of his books where he's walking his daughter along. He's that, see the bum over there? He has $1 billion more than me. And so I was looking at myself because I found myself in 100,000 in debt from credit cards to student loans to parental loans. And I'm like, how am I ever going to get out this? I'm like, it's not $1 billion. I'm pretty sure I can do that. And so one of the things that I'd read about at that point is that what I took from Bleach, what he was writing there is, and whoever wrote it, but they went in and said that banks would rather have something rather than nothing. And so I simply internalized that and I called in. I said, I was getting very close to my limits, unfortunately. And I called in and I'm like, I'm not able to pay you next month. And they're like, please hold. And they switched me over to this department called the debt remediation department. And I had no clue about these things. I'm like, who is this? And like, what we're going to do is we're going to drop your 30% down to 5. And we're going to have how does a 5-year payoff schedule sound? And you just can't use your cards right now. And at the end of it, we'll close out your account, but it won't trash your credit score in the process. And I did the math real quick. I could see the difference in the interest rates, like 25%, and what it was going to save me. I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I didn't waste it all. And then I called the next one after that, and the next one after that. And then I was feeling very bravado, and I called up the Department of Education to try to take care of my student loans. All the wind in my sails, they took out right away. But I was at like 6% in 20 years. That's the best you can do on both of those. Sorry about your luck. And then they hung up. And so I got all of my bad debt paid off in less than 5 years. You know, my business, it was eat what you kill. And some months are better than others and some years better than others. But if I got extra money, I just started piling it towards this stuff. And the feeling when you make the last payment, I want that for everybody that might be watching out there. If you're in debt, that is just pure joy. I don't know the way to say it. Like you've really, even when you go and negotiate your debt and you get out from underneath this thing, you have a ladder that you can climb out of the hole. And that just feels so good. And I want to spread that to everybody else. That's just financial education. I think being financial literate is when you finally have some kind of understanding of across the board of everything. That's what I would say. There's always hope, always hope.
Yeah, I want to stay on that thread for a little bit, but I first want to echo your sentiment. Yes, having debt is like an elephant on your back. It's so depressing and demoralizing, at least as you mentioned, bad debt and any amount of it. I probably carried that for 20 years. I don't know, it was maybe 15, but it was a long time and during that time, it was like a functional alcoholic. I had a job, I had a house, I 2 cars, and that was contributing to the limited amount of money that I could then apply towards the debt that just continued to grow. And yeah, I will echo that. We live debt free today largely. We have a mortgage in our house, but credit cards are paid off every month. And I just have such an aversion to any type of we leverage debt in our real estate businesses in various ways, but even that we keep probably a very conservative limit on. I just don't like to be over leveraged too much, but yeah, it is a great thing. Staying on the
don't pay the interest, get the points, don't pay the interest on the cards. And when you can use other people's money, make sure that you understand how leverage works and don't get too over leveraged, like you're saying.
Yeah. I want to stay on the hope aspect of things, and maybe somebody that's in some amount of debt and is having trouble. What are some of your tips? You mentioned remediation departments there. Or I think that's what you called it.
Debt remediation.
So you can call the institutions directly and request to speak to somebody about your debt or something like that. What would be some other tips for people that are carrying debt? Just some actions to take.
Do the opposite of our government. If you are making $1, don't spend $1.23. So you have to live within a budget. Sometimes that first takes care of, you have to get your debt under control. The last thing I would tell anybody to do is bankruptcy. That's the last option that's going to be hanging over your head for a while. It stays on there permanently. I think you'll find that most people would like to have something than nothing. They don't want to get stiffed, banks or anybody else out there. If you have medical debt, that's another huge one that's out there. As long as you're paying them something monthly, and this is not my expertise, but what I've been told is if you're paying them $1 a month, they can't send you to collections and it doesn't have a negative impact on you. That's a whole nother conversation about our sick care system. But I would say largely don't buy things that you don't need to impress people that don't care. That's like an Ice Cube quote. Stop buying things that you don't need for people that don't care with money you don't have.
Ice Cube, hip hop artist, by the way.
Yeah, got famous with NWA, with Dr. Dre and everybody else that way. There's a Jay-Z quote that's out there. If you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it. There's some really good sage, like street wisdom that's out there that you can use to guide you. But generally don't overspend to pretend. It's a good lesson I got in the book. Try to remediate whatever debt you can by getting your interest rates down. I think if you're calling in and they're going to ask you, can you afford to pay us? And you say, yeah, but I want to let it lesser rate. That's not going to work. You need to create a sense of urgency and say, I can't pay you this month. And then you'll find out that you'll get transferred over. because they don't want to go through the writing it off and sending you to a debt claims department or anything like that. There are things out there that can help you. There are some counselors out there, like credit counselors. Be very mindful of calling up these places that say they're going to settle your debt for you and they take your money and put it in over to another account. That's going to destroy your credit score. If you're not directly dealing with someone and then you're paying like a third party out there to settle this for you, that means payments aren't happening and your credit score is going to go down big time. So I would say very cautious away from that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anytime that if you do have family that can be able to help you out, that's another nice option. But I know that's not an option for everybody. But it's really like getting the interest rate down so you can afford the payment and then having a schedule that you can keep yourself accountable to get it paid off in a certain amount of time. And so if you have some kind of windfall money or you got some more earnings coming through, go do that. Another idea, you live in like a gig economy. It's never been easier to go out and get a job. If you have a car that's working, you can go do Uber. You can do anything else these days. Work.
Yeah.
I worked multiple jobs in the beginning and I countless hours. I wasn't making much. There's probably a lot more time available to you more than ever now to go out and get a side gig to get some more income coming in, to try to negotiate better money at your current job. Believe in yourself.
Yeah, we say the same thing. There's never been a better time to have a side gig, make a main gig, just to earn money today. There's really so many ways for the hustler that's willing to get out there and do things. And it is, yeah, I don't want to underplay. It's hard out there for people, for sure, especially if you have a family and you're working or whatever, but there are ways to earn an extra buck and apply it, and every little bit helps. For you personally,
And
what was your spark that, or did you always have it? You just couldn't get it under control or whatever. Like when you amassed a certain amount of debt, did you have a wake up moment or something that just said enough, rock bottom?
yeah, like usually when you run out of your credit limit, is that moment? Like there's nothing else to go from and the charade is up and then you're forced. You know how much stress that is having like the weight of so much debt. And it's not a great way to go through life and have to wake up. I'm going to do it today. It's really depressing and it's stressful. I had gotten down to the fact, and I think the lie in my industry is that when I got started in '03, a lot of my business was commissions. There's real estate out here now, they still make a commission, but largely since then, my business has turned into more fee based. So we get paid a small fee for managing someone's assets. And in the beginning, it was all commissions. And so if you're a mutual fund and you wanted to put in $100, you would just willingly give up $5 to the financial advisor. We would get paid that money or some of it. And then you would start off at 95 rather than 100. And people are like, I don't know how that ever made sense, but it's since migrated over that way. My wake up call is when you don't have enough money coming in and you think the next commission is just out there. It wasn't. And I had to face that truth and I had to walk that path and get to the point where you can't dig the hole any deeper. And again, I was out there. I still stayed curious though, which is a big thing on education. I still try to find other ways out and I kept looking, and being in the industry, I thought I had privy to some extra information that other people might not. I really didn't. I just stayed curious and read, and I found my answer watching a TV show. So you can get it from the wildest spots out there. Just be open to information and education.
Yeah, that's another truism today, is that there's never been more information out there. You have to be a little bit selective about who you're getting your information from. But yeah, definitely the amount and the ability to get educated and literate is very, it's a lot easier task today than 20 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Yep. I don't ever think you can become I don't think you can ever become like an expert. Always keep learning. That's what the great financial crisis taught me, is don't ever take anything on the surface level. There's always something else going on, and be open and mindful to these things. Sorry about that.
For sure.
I was curious, how do you help your clients and the people that you talk to really balancing their hard earned money, really, and to enjoy life, the enjoyment of life? And we do live in a society of consumerism. And many times we link our happiness with the things that we have and the trips that we can take and then all these experiences. And how do you help people balancing that and with really investing for their future, keep that balance in place where we want to enjoy life and usually that takes spending money, and then having that secure financial path.
So I think that the best things in life are free. It's what I've learned over time. You should be thankful the sun's up, right? And you have another day. My family history, I'm married. My wife is from Berlin, Germany. And so I shared this with my clients. So it's a great base story to talk about. They had to escape communism to come over across the wall in the back of a car 3 hours apart. And if one of them would have gotten caught, they effectively would have been divorced and thrown in prison. And if all we have to do here is roll out of bed, I don't think people really appreciate that enough. You roll out of bed and you do your best you can do each day. But it's the little things like that. And they're some of the most appreciative people of just having basic freedoms. The fact that they can travel, they were always told what to do. They had a story that Fidel Castro was over there talking at the University of Dresden, and they have all the students lined up, and then there's like guns on them, like, you'll clap now. And we don't have to do that here. And that's a great thing that we should be enjoyed here. So it's the little things in life that matter. I tend to run my practice and talk to everybody, say, I don't ever want this to feel like a dentist office. I don't want you to come in like, all right, you got to do this today, or a principal's office. I try to celebrate everybody's uniqueness. And if a couple comes in like you guys and the wife enjoys Starbucks and the husband knows that she's spending money on that, I bet he's spending money on something else. And so I don't try to start in kind of infighting. Whatever makes you happy is great. But I try to run this all by goals based. So if you get to this, treat yourself. If you get to there, treat yourself. And you can't just keep grinding the whole time and eating like cold oatmeal every day and keeping your heater on at 60 degrees at your house. You have to have something enjoyable every once in a while. But yeah, generally it's that, it's goal based. When you get to retirement though, there was a great financial planner, and his name's missing from me right now, but he summarized retirement into 3 different sections: the go years, the slow go years, and then the no go years. And in the go years, you're spending your money on things that you would enjoy doing, like traveling. And by the time you get to the no go years, it's more like you're falling apart and you got to pay for healthcare. So that's generally how we run it here. And I try to keep mindful of what makes my clients happy and making sure they're not spending too much. Because I've never met anybody that died with their last dollar or wish they didn't save enough.
Yeah, those are important lessons. And another parallel, I guess, here, I don't know if that resonated with you a bit, but Lydia grew up in Romania, first 15 years of her life under a dictator, authoritarian, communist, parades, stand in line, worship the leader, all that kind of stuff. And so we talk about this quite often, that culturally, she just comes from a degree difference than I do. And our daughters growing up here have just a totally different perspective. And it is, I love the message. We embrace mindset of being appreciative for the things that we have, health, just waking up and spending time together in our business and in our life and all the little things. And it is a great perspective to come from. We live and grow up in the US, and we are bombarded just, 24/7 with messages of consumerism and image and status. And it's a hard barrier to crack through. I think even if I think about our daughters, they're in their mid 20s, late 20s. They logically know that. They know, oh, I should be appreciative and grateful. But they have expectations and perspectives. And they're in that era of their life where they are comparing themselves to their friends. They're having babies. They're buying a house. They're upgrading the car. I don't know. There's all these things going on. So it's a really hard cultural barrier. And that's earlier in the conversation. That's why I was asking about the power of culture and versus the mindset of doing all that. I liken it a little bit to nutrition, right? If you put yourself on a severe diet of scarcity and lack, it's really hard to sustain that for a long time. Some of us can, but it just puts you in a frame that, oh, I can't spend on this, I can't spend on that. And I think, Lydia, that's where your question was firmly rooted in how, you have to find some kind of a balance there where people don't feel like they're just sacrificing everything. I can do that. Like when I was in debt, I got to a point to where I was like, nothing, no spend, live like a monk, eat ramen noodles. Every dollar's going to pay down this debt. And probably where I wasn't as focused was on things like you did in terms of just reaching out. Hey, can I negotiate a better deal on this? Can I do things on the other end of that? But just getting back to the culture aspect of things, it's really tough. And I would like to shift the conversation to, we've talked a bit about being in trouble and digging your way out. I'd love to spend some time talking about prevention. Like, how do we avoid getting into those kind of traps and maybe some healthy behaviors and habits, whether that comes from lessons that you've learned or observed. I don't know if your book dives into some things like that, but I think about our daughters. I talk to them every once in a while. Hey, how are you financially? And okay, they have some debt, but it's probably measured in the thousands, like maybe $2,000 or something that's just really approachable. Yeah. And stuff. But what are some good tips there? Other than obviously psychology and mindset play a big factor in it, right? You have to This is also something I'd like to explore, not to confuse the conversation, but I think a lot of our spending habits are rooted in psychology, and some, like, there are emotional eaters, there are emotional spenders. There are people that are filling a void with just things like I
Yep.
don't know what that is that makes you feel good about shopping, because it doesn't make you feel good when you get the bill, but maybe.
So my advice, yeah, there's one of the top selling books ever in personal finance. It's by an author named Morgan Housel. And he's just a genius at breaking down this. It's called The Psychology of Money.
Mhm.
On the front cover, it's a brain if you've seen it before, but you should check that book out. My advice that I've always done and told my clients is wait 1 week. You're living in a culture, it's just like you said, it's bombarding you here and there and all commercials and do this and that. On large purchases, especially, wait 1 week and see if it's an impulse purchase or not, because it probably is. Because that's what we've been designed to sell to. We're in a consumer economy here. And so you really figure out if you need it or not. And if you do, you probably have had some time to think about how, if you can afford that right now, or should you wait a little bit longer? That's a great thing. Is just temper your enthusiasm, wait a week. That's probably my biggest thing I can tell you on that. Other things like these big purchases are, you can say like a bunch of small purchases add up to a lot. But that's where I think some people's simple joys, if you like going to Starbucks, go to it. Yeah, you go $5 a day. I can sit here and do the math for an entire year. But if it's something nice that makes you feel good from day to day, why should you have to sacrifice that? It's probably less impactful than, say, buying a house like it's too expensive, or
Yeah.
a car, or jewelry you don't need, or something like this. That would be my advice on that. On college, we live in a lot of things here have been turned into a business, admittedly, over the last few years. I left college with like 25,000 in debt, and it's pretty normal now to have 100,000 in debt. My advice here that I usually give the parents of their kids is really think through what you want to do first. I probably bought into this lie that you just graduate high school and go to college. And then the first year is like a blow off year and you're partying, and the schools don't care. They'll take your money, which is in the form of debt. They get paid. Who cares? But really think about what you want to do, because you shouldn't run up more debt than your first year earnings of what your chosen profession is. So if you're a teacher and you want to be a teacher, God bless you, all the teachers out there. If you're making 50, 60,000, you probably shouldn't be running up double that
Yeah.
to become a teacher. There's a lot of free education too that you can get out there, or employers that will help you pay. There's lots of little tricks like that I would share with you, but keep something that makes you happy daily. Be appreciative of the small things. But on large purchases that are pretty impactful, that you're signing up for a long period of time, the car loans turned into 7 or 8 years now. It's crazy. Mortgage is 30. All they're doing is just dragging you into a deeper hole for longer. Really think it through. You don't need to have a new car. Get a used car. Although a couple years ago, I remember used car prices were more than new cars. It's been wild the last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. COVID has put us all for a
I
spin.
think you bring up such a good point, because many times we just go through motion in life. And even as parents, which I don't mean to talk negative about today's parenting style, but as a parents, we just want to offer our kids, if you want to go to college, of course, we're going to provide for you the college education and we're going to do that. But we don't take the time to really challenge the young people. Hey, think about what you really want to do in life before we sink in so much money. And many times it's a complex conversation, but many times also young people don't know what they want to do. So that's such a young age. When you're 18, or you don't know what you want to do in life, you want to provide that. But then we get deeper and deeper in debt, and without thinking through these things. And we talk many times that it would be really important in college and even high school to have classes on budgeting, to have classes on financial education.
On student debt.
Yeah.
Starting young, like basics, right?
Yes.
That's why I'm hoping with the book, I can make finance so quote unquote cool or more accessible. Yeah, I think we live in a celebrity obsessed culture.
Yeah.
And so if you're learning about these people that you know their name, like if I asked you a hip hop celebrity's name, you probably heard of Jay-Z, but do you know what an IRA stands for? And I've been doing this the last few days, and people are like, internal revenue. I'm like, it's individual retirement account.
Yeah.
And so I see that phrase all the time, but it needs to start young. I think the most valuable thing that's ever happened in my life is when I met my wife and I was able to travel and get out of this bubble that we live in. If you just go to Mexico, for instance, you can go to a resort, look across the street. That's how a lot of the world is living, and getting out of your bubble and see how well off you have it
Yes.
here and the opportunities you have here. I joke with my wife often that in Germany, you might tell by my demeanor, I'm a bit rambunctious and have high energy. But in Germany, I probably would be changing oil right now because they have it so structured early on. If you're paying attention, getting grades, you'll go do this track. I don't know that I would have made that there, but I appreciate that people starting off young and teaching their kids young. And I've been pretty plugged in with my daughters who are 10 and 11, and then their school, they're learning a little bit about finance. And being a financial planner, I'm trying to do my best to brainwash them to save 20%. You save 20%. And I've done things like I put them on as employees of my business so they can show up and do some work here. And then I put that money into a Roth IRA. So it's a tax deduction to me. They don't pay taxes because they're underage, and it's going into an account that's going to be tax free. And that's a huge thing for anybody out there that has children and you have your own business. That's an easy thing to do. But how many people know how to do this? You probably not have heard that before. That's okay. Also, another thing, adding your kids on as authorized users on your credit cards, not to get back to credit, but you're building a credit score. They don't have to get a card, but if you're a responsible borrower of credit, it's possible if you add them on at 8, and by the time they're 18, they're going to have a decade long of impeccable credit. And so if they want to go get a duplex and get into the real estate game, they can afford to go get, they're like, wow, you have 800 credit score. You get some money saved up. You live on the other side and take care of the other one. There's so many things out there that can be done for education.
What great tips. You rolled through some there. I was going to ask you how and I guess I still will, but yeah, I love that concept. I didn't do that with our daughters, and I know they struggle when they were young adults out of school with all of those things. It's like they had no credit or they had bad credit because they mismanaged or things like that, and they're digging out of a hole. But how are you going about as a parent building your kids' financial literacy? So you mentioned at least promoting savings and feeding an investment account of sorts. Are there other ways that you got? Are you giving allowances, or I guess they get a salary or some kind of money in theory?
Yep. Yeah. I saw a quote. I think it's supposed to be from Bill Murray. And I'm a huge Bill Murray fan too. But he said, teach your kids about taxes and go eat 30% of their ice cream before they get it. Shaquille O'Neal does like dad tax, and he goes up and takes a bite out of the food first. So you're like introducing him. What do you mean I can't have it all? You got to pay the man first. Yeah. I've tried to brainwash them essentially by saying, if you get an allowance, how much you should be saving? 20%. And I give them the answer. So they'll say it back. My youngest is the resident miser, and she just won't part with anything. I'm like, proud of you. She's very thrifty. The older one is not so thrifty, but she does remember like 20%. I've been very open about when we're paying them something here from the business for work that they do. They dress up during the year for holiday parties, like at elves sometime, and we'll make promotional videos to help out the community. Come here and help out and introduce everybody every once in a while. But I'm telling them very openly what we're doing with that money, and it's going into an account. And I show them their statements because I want them to not only see it go up, but I especially want to see when it goes down, so they can see that it doesn't just go up. I'm trying to normalize seeing something that goes up and down versus a bank account or their piggy bank that just stays constant. You pay your bills out of that one, but this other bucket over here, that's for long-term growth. Just from Roth IRAs, if you're able to do that and have a child on there and put in for them, Roth IRAs, just to be clear, they're tax-free accounts and you can open up for children. The max is $7,000 a year. So if they have earned income of 7, you can put 7 in. And if you do that for a decade, so you start them off at 8 to 18 while you're also building a credit score, and you put in 70 grand, good chances are it's going to be worth more than that at the end of the decade. But that money is typically used for retirement. So 59 and a half, that is millions of dollars of tax-free money that's going to be there for them. And so I've told them, if you don't touch this, even though you could use it for education or a first home purchase, if you end up not using it for those things, you're going to have millions of dollars in the future that are tax-free to you. And they're like, I don't know what that means. but they're like, I'm going to go thank you someday.
Just don't
all
touch
you got to
it.
do is figure out, just don't touch it.
Don't interrupt the power of compounding.
I want them to ultimately figure out what they want to do in life and have to provide for them that way.
Yes.
But if I can help out on student stuff, going up through it, if they do go to college, we'll see. I'm hoping they do. And then retirement, if they can just figure out the middle part, they want to be a teacher, God bless them. I want them to be able to do that and maybe not have to save. But that's what I currently do for my kids. And that was not what was done for me. But I want them to be taken care of that way and not to still have some kind of struggle in the middle to figure out life, but not have to worry about the beginning or at the end, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thought. I think back to and I think a lot of parents might be struggling with this, and it's. I'm not going to say it's impossible because it's certainly possible, but I think a lot of people get in that period of time when you have kids, the money outflow is just really a lot. It's hard to think about. I think for a lot of young parents to put $7,000 a year into an account, but yes, for every year you start earlier, the back end math on that is great, and if it's in a tax, I guess, a tax free, but right, you're paying on the front end. It's a really amazing vehicle to have. Let's pivot somewhere around this conversation. I know we want to wrap this up here in not too long, but where do you see in the next year or two, 2025, 2026, in terms of investments and opportunities for people? And how are you maybe guiding some of your clients?
Yeah, good question. I don't own a
Crystal
crystal ball
ball,
like
yeah, I
anybody
understand.
else.
We'll put
Nah,
a
but
disclaimer down there. It's not
cool.
financial advice.
Yeah,
Past performance is no
not financial
guarantee of
advice.
future returns, all that.
Hey, you got it down. You got it down. I also have this prop that's always on my desk, and people are like, "It's the bull from Wall Street." They're like, "Do you have a bear?" I'm like, "No, they happen so fast. There's no point. This is my heavy paperweight that's out here." Ever since 2022, say October, middle of October 2022, we've been in this bull market, and I think people are waking up to that. A bull market is just horns up, so the stock market generally and investments are going up, where a bear market is claws down. Bears aren't known for going on long runs. They're more of a sprinter. And if they get you, they hurt you. So this particular moment in time, you could just generically say we're in a bull market. We're in year number 3, and they typically run for anywhere from 4 to 7 years. No one really knows. That's why I love the Mark Twain quote that history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. So I keep a vision for that. But I had thought this year that no matter what, somebody was going to win. And we probably have a divided Congress because we'd seen like we were pretty 50-50 in America. And post election, I think the biggest surprise is that we figured out who was elected the next day. Love them or hate them. And furthermore, you have a majority. And so I don't know that I don't think it's tied anymore. I think it's like 55-45, possibly at this point. If they were in the fight club here right now, you have a slight edge on one side, but they do call it making the Washington pork sausage for a reason. What you think might happen, and I work with a good deal of law enforcement, there's usually a story here, there's a story here, but the truth is in the middle. So I don't want to get wildly overblown on what I think, but generally speaking, we're going to have a lot of growth at all costs, I believe. There's going to be some deregulation where you cut red tape. And generally, taxes probably are going to be lower for longer. They're going to have to find out a way to pay for that because at the beginning, we're talking about a government that is overspending by almost 25%. How do you get your budget in line? If you have every appendage on your body, one of them's got to go. You're probably not getting rid of the head. Both of your legs are useful. So are you right-handed or left-handed? And that's probably the arm that's got to get chopped off to balance the budget. So generally speaking, I think would just be a looser regulatory environment, and that should provide some more growth upward. So I've seen something that just came out. It was a business confidence, small business confidence, and that skyrocketed since the election. And not being political again, the current administration versus the one coming in, they have two different standpoints on we want to raise up business or we're trying to like making sure consumers are first. Sell or be sought or be buy from. I think the business confidence is great because that starts to get businesses spending money on things again. People can get hired, hopefully you get better wages. And we try to grow our way out of the debt that we've been accumulating without having too much debt. So that's what I would say is my sum up.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice kind of macro view. Are you a proponent of index funds or specific stocks or certain industries or anything like that?
I've always found that stocks you can get right once, but you're probably wrong a lot more
Yeah.
times. So I don't try to overthink anything in my practice. I've been a big believer in just using mutual funds and ETFs. Be very mindful of what you're paying. Because no one really
Right.
sees that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sees that exactly. You're not like writing a check to them. They just take it out for you. It's very convenient for the company, right? So be very mindful. My dad always told me when you're building, he's a woodworker now in his retirement years. To hold a stool up, you need 3 legs. So you should always know what you're paying for, what it should be doing, and then keeping an eye on it. What should it be doing for you, what you're paying, and what is it doing for you? Know those 3 things, and you're pretty well taken care of on investments.
That's great. How about alternative type investments? I'm familiar with a lot of other financial planners, especially ones that work for companies and institutions, and it seems a little more, I'll say mainstream, like in stocks, bonds, funds, mutual funds, things like that. What about real estate? Do you get involved in things like that or other vehicles? Like in our world, is 1031 exchanges where you can shelter some of your real estate over time, anything like that? Or are you guys pretty locked into more of the traditional financial instruments?
No, being like a certified financial planner, I have lots of clients that do lots of real estate and they have side businesses. I thought you were going to ask me about Bitcoin for a second, but that's good. That's a whole other
Yes.
alternative asset
Yes.
class. But real estate, our tax code, it was pretty much invented for three things. It's for real estate, it's small business owners and charity. And if you know how to maximize those, you're going to be sitting
Yeah.
pretty. And so with real estate 1031, you can buy a property and you can sell it and buy a like kind exchange, and there's no taxes due on that. And there's passive income versus passive losses as well.
Right.
I'm a big proponent of real estate. When they jacked up interest rates, it's gotten a lot more
Yeah.
difficult probably to be able to do something. But if you can self finance, you're probably sitting pretty. It's just finding good deals out there. All my real estate that I have, like my home, and we got like an Airbnb rental that we've got. We're fortunate enough to have been able to get them when rates were in the twos and threes. I know somebody would kill me right now to be able to get that.
Yeah.
So I think rates are slowly coming down. So I think real estate can pick up as they go down. But the problem is the prices have come up a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're going to go down because it doesn't seem like there's enough inventory.
Yeah, definitely on the macro level, some shock to the system might be able to disrupt it. But yeah, at the macro level, we love housing and real estate just because all the forces are pushing in appreciative directions. Oil and gas is another, or yeah, let's say energy in general is another pillar of tax code friendliness,
Mhm.
but it's a very volatile area as well.
Yes.
This is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love all this. I'm excited to peruse your book a little bit. I think
Yeah.
that's a interesting topic, at least for me, growing up in a similar era as you and knowing some of those. So that's a great thing. Is that available anywhere? You telling that everywhere? Or?
Yeah. That's going to be on Amazon. I went the self publishing route so I could
Yeah.
retain 100% ownership. Being a first time author, if you went with the publisher, they tended to ask you for a fee to get to pay them money so they don't have to absorb any cost. And then, oh, by the way, we're just going to take 100% of your publishing rights. And so I decided to do it self publishing, and everything's going to be on Amazon, the hardcover, paperback, the ebook. And then I recorded my own audiobook doing this whole thing. And that was a whole other adventure that was in there. But I thoroughly enjoyed the process and learning it. So Hip Hop X Finance is going to be out. I don't know when this is going to air, but it'll be out shortly after the Super Bowl next year, February. You go on there, it'll be available to order for then. And I'm looking forward to people maybe giving these out as graduation gifts. I was trying to get a little bit of the New Year hangover from overspending. And maybe I want to have a resolution here to get under control and then going into graduations. So I wrote it for my 18-year-old self. So I had some kind of understanding of the basics.
Yeah.
So I'm never going deep in everything. But if I can just get you to think a little bit deeper about things, that you can go down those rabbit holes and work towards being financial literate. Education first and literacy second.
Beautiful. I so appreciate
Yeah.
that. I recently published a book as well, self-published, and it's
Congratulations.
definitely a process and a big milestone. So congratulations to you as well. I know it's not an easy task at
Yes.
all, and it's a very vulnerable task as well to put something out into the universe like that.
Yep. It's
Really
all
thinking
good.
about bringing a positive. Yes, sometimes the financial debt can be so heavy and so overwhelming, but there is hope. And to your point, there are so many instruments out there, so many tools, so many things that the regular people don't know about. Some people like to research, but some people need a person like you, need services like this to help them understand what can they do for their babies, for their children. And after, even if you're mature and later in life, you can still do something financially to get relief from the debt. So there's great news. And I think we live in an amazing society. And I am so appreciative to live here because I come from a different culture and I can see, man, people just need to try, just need to get
Mhm.
educated. And because there's so many options.
Definitely.
Yes, I completely echo that as well. And you don't know what you have until you go visit somewhere else and then come back. There's a lot of great things about American society
Yes.
and being able to make it here. That's the American capitalism. But a lot of places don't have the ability. You can't raise yourself up. You have to you're a square peg. This is what you're doing. And here you can literally do anything you want. And it's a great thing out there.
It's a powerful perspective, and there's a lot of truth to the phrase first world problems. I think a lot of the things that we complain about, or when you put that perspective on things, it really is a mindset shift. So I'm a big proponent of travel nationally, at least, but yes, internationally if you can, because it really is an eye opener.
That's for sure.
Well, we certainly appreciate you spending some time with us, sharing your wisdom and insights here. It's a great a great service you provide. And it really is it can be a painful and a shameful one for a lot of people. So bringing some air of entertainment into the process and helping people embrace the lessons in more of a light way. I love the mission that you're on. So certainly thank you very much for that. We like to end our episodes with gratitude. If there's a person or persons in your life that have really been helpful along your way, certainly like to give you the opportunity to give a little expression of gratitude there.
Thank you. And I appreciate the kind words. And I would say straight up right off the bat, what the sacrifice is to write a book. And so my wife and children, thank you so much. My mom bought me this little figurine back when I was in college. And I looked at this very often when I was going through what I had to go through to stop digging and get out of the hole. And it was a little rabbit figurine that it had a simple inscription. It is holding a big carrot and it says dream big. And so I never lost focus of that. I looked at that every day. So my mom and dad, they gave that to me. And then my grandmother, God bless her soul, she lived to be 103 and a half. I don't know if she asked for that, but she made it to there. And she always said, do your best and always try your best and never give up. And so my little daughters who are able to have a relationship with her always say that now. So that's my gratitude that I always take with me every day.
Beautiful. Love it. Thanks again for coming on the show. And yeah, we look forward to hearing more about your journey and wish you all the best in 2025 and beyond.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And for the people that are listening to this and are very inspired and want to take actions and get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Go to hiphopxfinance.com and that'll be able to you can get in touch with me through the books there and just have a link to the book and you can get a message to me directly from there. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll get all that in the show notes as well. So people will have easy access to it. And thanks again, Drew. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
You too.
For those of you tuning in, we thank you so much for investing your time with us on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. We certainly had a blast, received some knockout insights, all while learning something new. And we hope you did too.
If you had fun, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you watch or listen.
Lydia and I truly believe the beauty of cash flow is having your money fight for you instead of you having to fight for money. So whether it's one of these methods or something else, we encourage you to dream big and take action. See you next time.